Um, Hi, welcome to Connections 2020 Midwest. This talk is brought to you by APA, American Photographic Artists. I'm Juliet Wolf-Robin, National Executive Director of APA. APA is a photo association for professional advertising and editorial photographers. Our talk today is Reflection and Action. It's moderated by Martine Séverin. She is a lifestyle photographer based in Chicago. She's on the APA Chicago board, and she also heads our diversity committee. So we welcome you today, and we will invite you to, at the end, to ask any questions for our panelists. So let me pass it to Martine.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so pleased to have both Tiffany Persons as well as Orial Pascal David-Lyons to this webinar. And today we're primarily going to be talking about how Me Too and the Black Lives Matter movement has influenced everything in the photo industry. And I'm so pleased to have both Tiffany and Orial here to join us. I wanted to start out by asking you, Orial, how have you reacted to the Me Too and the Black Lives Matter movement?
I guess there's been a lot of different reactions, right, over the last, couple of years, I suppose. It's been very emotional, I think, going through that process and being in the industry and kind of watching it change to some degree around you, but also probably not enough as well. But ultimately, I'm, for me, it's positive for me. I'm as hard, I think, as this year has been, particularly, and as hard as it is being both Black in the industry, and I imagine being a woman and a woman of color in the industry. I think the changes that we're seeing are good. So, I think overall, I'm feeling good about where we're heading, but also cautious, and I know that there is always more that can be done and that should be done. So it's a cautious optimism, I suppose I would probably sum it up with.
And so, I mean, with this cautious optimism, you decided certainly to channel that into action by starting the One School. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about that?
Of course. So I guess rewinding to earlier in the summer, I'd been out kind of marching and protesting, like I'm sure a lot of us have been, and then it got to a point where I have to do my day job, and I've got kids to look after. I can't really be out there tangling with the police, on the front line of marches all the time. But I wanted to continue, at least to feel like I was taking part, or continuing to be active and to take that activism that I think has really defined the year and bring it into like my industry. And I thought, like, what could I do with the things that I have available to me, which right now is not much more than it's a laptop, it's a Zoom account, and it's some connections in the industry. And I thought about, like, how does this conversation that we're having nationally on a nationwide scale at all levels, how is that being reflected in my particular corner of the industry? And how is this issue, this big problem of systemic racism, how is that appearing, in my department, and what could I do about it? So I kind of focused. It helped me to feel a little bit more like I was, I had something to do in the face of such a huge kind of issue. It helped me to feel a little more like I can do this. I can break off this little piece. And it started actually with a post on LinkedIn, and I was just talking about the barriers to entry to get into the ad industry, particularly as a creative, right? To put a portfolio together, you have to go to expensive ad school. You know, it's 2 years and it's $40,000. And what that means is that, you know, we get these graduates and the books are great, you know, but we're only seeing a tiny fraction of the talent that is actually out there, because what you're seeing is people who've had, you know, had the resources and the means to be able to put $40,000 down and get a book together over 2 years, you know? So we're not seeing people who don't have access to those kinds of resources, you know? And yet for me, you're seeing those people out in the world creating the content and the culture that we're then referencing and chasing in the industry. You know, you're seeing young Black creators out there doing their own thing on Instagram and on TikTok. You know, they're starting the dances that brands are like then desperately trying to capitalize on, you know? And I'm like, well, these people can do what we do. They're doing it better than we do it. Yet where are they in this department, you know? And so for me, I just put out the offer to help young Black creatives who didn't have the money to go to like expensive ad school. I said, if you want help putting a book together, reach out and I'll help. And I got a lot of responses, probably too many, than, you know, more than I could actually handle. So I started to do Zoom classes. And it was pretty informal. It was just like, I just replied to all the people who'd sent me messages and I said, I'm going to do this class on Zoom. You know, we're going to talk about what it takes to put a good book together. And that was an hour and we did that and it was a lot of fun. And then I did another one that was more about the creative process and how to have ideas. And then after a couple of those, the One Club reached out and they had seen the post and they'd seen kind of what I was doing. And they offered to make it a bit more formal and put like the infrastructure around it. And literally from like the first call I had with them, I think, to going live and accepting applications, it was about 2 weeks. We got on the phone and we were like, let's do this. You know, I built a website over a weekend and, you know, a couple of weeks later we were live and open for applications. And then about 6 weeks after that, you know, we launched 2 programs, one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast, and we have 15 students in each. And now we're about 5 weeks in to the first class, and it's going well. You know, it's 2 nights a week. It's hard work, you know, like it's definitely not the easy way in, you know, even though it's free for students, like they are giving a lot of their time. It requires a lot because they're having to learn what some people take 2 years. They're having to try and learn that in 16 weeks. So hopefully by February, you'll see 30 Black creatives graduate and join the industry. And then our plan is to run it twice a year. And then also expand as well and you know, execute it in different regions as well. So it's just, it's another pipeline, an alternate pipeline, I think, for people, you know, to kind of get that Black talent that we all know is out there into the industry.
I love how on your website for One School, there's something where you say this program will be held over several nights, and if you think this is a program where you could sit in your taking a bath or drinking bubbles and doing this class, this is not a course for you. So I love that in the description you outright say this is going to be a lot of hard work but rewarding at the same time. So can you tell us what are some of the themes that have come up, or what are some of the feedback that you've received in terms of what people have taken out of the school so far?
Yeah. We've had there's been a couple of nice kind of notes that I've kept with me from students who, you know, now they're a few weeks in. One was a tweet actually from a student after our first night, and he just put it out on Twitter, and he was like, "I love my ad school. It's like just fully black, fully creative, you know." And you could just, I guess, you could just see the joy and like. For me, it was the feeling that I wanted to make sure that they had, was that feeling where you have people who look like you and people who kind of you look up to, and you can see yourself following their path, you know, 5, 10, 15 years down the line, and they're talking directly to you and no one else, and it's all for you, you know. And that's and so it's about kind of giving them confidence, and I think a lot of them are getting that, because we have these great sessions where we have Black lecturers come in and talk to the students, and you know, it's a vibe. It's a real special connection, you know, in a way that I don't think I've certainly never experienced, you know, in any form of education. And you know, I think that for me that was the goal, and to see it kind of being realized, I think is really special. But yeah, I think you're seeing that they're growing in confidence. A lot of them have I think expressed like that they're being challenged in a way that I don't think they had previously in terms of the briefs that we're giving them. You know, we're really pushing them like creatively. You know, and I expect a lot from them, because you know, that's the point. I don't want to just put them into the industry. I want them to be the best in the industry. You know, I want to set them up to see themselves at the top of the industry, not to just kind of, you know, fill the bottom ranks. So I think they're getting that, and for me, I start to see their confidence, you know, growing over the few weeks. So it's been really nice.
Oh, that's perfect. Tiffany, I'd love to turn back to you. Now, I asked Orial this question in the beginning, and one of the reasons why I ask it is because you know, the personal often becomes, you know, the professional. We oftentimes are create the change that we want to see in the world. And so, how have you met, and your organization, I should say, because you've owned your company for a number of years, how have Me Too and the Black Lives Matter influenced you, either on the personal or professional level?
It's been, like Oriel said, for me, it's been exciting. It's been a long time coming, and I was ready, you know, and ready to respond. So for me, that looks like, for my company, Tiffany Company Casting, as a Black woman owning a casting company, I've already been in that position of making sure that I'm putting the beautiful, diverse group of people that I'd like to see in commercials in front of them. So that's been what I've been doing for the last 14 years. But what's been interesting about this time is feeling more comfortable to voice when something doesn't feel right, right? So if I'm asked, oh, we want a hip hop producer, but it happens to be a white hip hop producer that they say that they want, I actually get on the phone and say, that doesn't actually feel right. Let's talk about this. And I don't know if I would have had the gall to do that a year ago. And it feels amazing, you know, to be able to have these conversations and to know that they are being listened to and it's being heard, and that there is a space for that. So that's what changed for me in Tiffany Company Casting. And then when I looked out into the world, I'm dear friends with David Angelo from David and Goliath, because he's been a long supporter of our organization, Shine On Sierra Leone. And the first thing I thought about is all of the agencies that I worked with over the last 14 years with my casting company. And I just picked up the phone and called David, and I said, I'd love to do a workshop. And at the time, I really hadn't had it worked out, but I knew that it was about just having a real honest conversation about what we were seeing, about the scripts that were coming through them and from them. And then he said, yes, and I think it should be about empathy. And I was like, absolutely. And then so we just kind of like started to build on that together. And the next thing you know, he said, okay, well, I'll one up you. I'd like to offer you a position as the director of empathy. at David and Goliath. And I thought, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
Currently at David and Goliath, you are tasked with being an essential in accelerating recruiting efforts to increase Black talent in every level at DNG. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about what are the plans for this position? What does it look like, and what does success look like in terms of recruiting Black talent and making sure that they're able to thrive at the company at DNG?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, before I answer that question, I just want to acknowledge Orial and just say, I just love what you are doing. Like that's exactly, like Orial and I are going to be friends, because this is what we need, is this, this training program. And so that is one of the things that David Angelo has taken on, and understanding that it's more than just, okay, we're opening up the doors and hiring Black people that already have experience in the industry. Of course, that as well, but it's about those who would never have training to be able to come into the industry. So David and Goliath has started something called the Brave University, which is a mentorship program directly with David Angelo. It's an entry-level position into the industry, along with, you know, one-on-one mentorship with David, and across all of the different areas of the agency. So that's exciting. What success looks like for me is being able to offer these entry-level positions to those unicorns that would never, ever have this opportunity. That's what it looks like to me, which very much parallels with what Orial is doing. They have the talent, it's in them, it lives in them. But just having that opportunity to be walked in through the door, they might even be overlooked because they don't speak like one would think they should speak, or they don't look like one, you know. And I know, I can't speak for Orial, but I know for me, I've never had a problem with doors being closed for me, you know, and I'm very clear about that. And I want to see those that don't necessarily have that, the assimilation that I've been able to create in my life. I want to see them be able to walk in the door and be embraced as well.
Well, that's beautiful. I mean, the pipeline it's working here, because if Oriel is taking this up and coming workforce and training them and getting them ready, and then he could hand them over to you.
I know, it just moves me.
It's such a beautiful thing.
Awesome. Yeah.
So one of the things I'd love to chat about is, you know, the people who sit at the table, and certainly that is both of you are active participants in changing what that looks like. I was thinking about how are there any other ways that you, in your mind, I should say, that agencies could help accelerate this process of making sure that different types of folks, diverse people, are having a seat at the table and are having their voices being heard?
Absolutely. I feel, well, the first thing is being conscious, as we are centered on diversity and wanting to have diverse scripts and a diverse group of people portrayed in commercials, understanding that those scripts need to come and be written by the people that they're writing about, right? So that could be Black people, it can be Asian people, but really honoring the authenticity and the nuances that are a people and a culture. And so the first thing is inviting those people into the spaces that are those creative spaces that make those decisions, that write those scripts. It's imperative. It's imperative, because there's really there's no other way that we can allow authentic stories to come through if they don't come from us. And I say us in that broad sense of the word, right?
Yeah, I think just to build on that, I think I've thought a lot about it, like how do you ensure that, you know, the change is lasting? And for me, one of the things I'm kind of focused on as well is that the pipeline that we're all creating right now doesn't stop at the front door, right? It doesn't stop at the agency door, and that's something I think we have to be able to do both. We have to think about the ways into the industry, but we also have to think about what is the path then once you're in to the top of it. Because right now, you know, you see, or in my just personal, you know, anecdotal experience, I see a lot of young people of color, you know, coming into the industry full of enthusiasm, and the industry's kind of saying, we want you here, we need you here. But 2 years later, you know, they're looking around, they're like, I'm not getting the promotion. You know, I'm not getting the same creative opportunities, you know, and I find that and because you're generally in places where you are one of a handful of, you know, people who look like you and who get your same references, you're always kind of trying to convince someone else that, hey, this is what we should be doing. And you know, like you're saying, Tiffany, those scripts, it's not like when you present them, someone's like, yes, I love it. They're like, wait, but is that really how people do this? Or is that, you know, will everyone get that? Or, you know, and you're being questioned on your cultural kind of knowledge. And you're like, well, I wouldn't have to convince you. I wouldn't have to convince someone, you know, I wouldn't have to convince another Black person that this is what we should be doing, you know, but you're always in this mode of, here is how we should be speaking. Here's how we should be reacting to this moment or on this brief. And that's tiring, you know, and if you don't have people above you and around you, not necessarily the same color as you, but people who understand the gap, you know, that cultural gap and that reference gap, and are working to kind of fix it, and even admitting that they may not understand it, they may not get it, but they know that your point of view has value, and you're bringing something to the table that they can't do, and that's the point, and that's why you're there, and they're fast tracking you, and they're elevating you, and they're giving you those opportunities. I think without that kind of engaged mentorship and constant like checking, you know, of yourself, it's very hard, I think, for people to see that path all the way through the industry. So you find a lot of young people of color moving around a bit more, you know, because that's how you advance, you know. So, and other agencies like, hey, come over here, we'll give you more money, we'll give you the promotion that your agency's not giving you. And that's how I see a lot of people of color making those strides in their career. Whereas I don't think that's the case necessarily always for, you know, people, I'm just like white, you know, people in the industry, when everyone who up the chain looks like you, and they all watch Seinfeld, and they all get your jokes, and you've got all those like shortcuts to being comfortable and being kind of told that, hey, like the people at the top are just like you, you know, and, you know, we don't have that luxury. So I think it's on the white industry leaders to recognize how the people who are just joining, people of color who are joining this industry and who are down there in the kind of the middle of it, and they're really like hungry, you know, at that stage of your career where it's like, you know, I have to make big strides. It's recognizing that you as a senior white kind of executive aren't going to get everything that they're bringing you, you know, but you have to be able to value it just the same. And I think it's not about molding these, you know, people of color to fit in to the agency or to the way of doing things, you know, and that's kind of this idea of like professionalism and all of that stuff, which is kind of based in, you know, essentially a lot of it is based in whiteness, you know. I think that is the thing that we have to start to undo, is, and that work has to be done by the people at the top of the industry, and a lot of them, you know, it's going to be a challenge. But I think for me, that's something I'm thinking about a lot more as well, because I'm aware that I'm creating a pipeline of people, you know, into the industry, but I want to make sure that that continues and that they don't get in and suddenly 2 years later they're like, what am I doing here, you know?
And I love the fact that both of you are working hand in glove in terms of creating, or at least creating a, giving a group of people access to an industry that will help us as human beings tell better stories, tell more new stories, which is essentially what our job is all about. Well, as we're wrapping up here, Orial of the One School, I thank you so much for joining us, and I really appreciate all of the work that you're doing. And I know that we at APA are so pleased that you were able to join us. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us. You know, I've always followed you in terms of the work that you've done with the Tiffany Company casting, and now as Director of Empathy at DNG. I'm extremely excited in terms of what that means for all of these wonderful people, some of them perhaps coming from the One School, who will be coming into the industry and will go in knowing that they'll have a job, but yet they will be getting all the tools while at any company to actually be able to make a huge difference and to help all of us tell better stories. Thank you so much. Before we end, do you have any last words, anything that you want to share?
I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity to catch up and talk with you both. I think, and to the American Photographic Association, just for facilitating these conversations. I think this is, as Tiffany said earlier, right at the beginning, it's like, finally, I think a lot of the things that we've all probably talked about behind closed doors for a long time, we're able to now have these conversations out in the open and be listened to and taken seriously. And so I always just, appreciate the opportunity to, you know, make these kinds of connections and have these conversations. So thank you.
Yeah. Yes, and thank you. Pleasure. Thank you to APA. Thank you to you, Martine. And the one thing I wanted to conclude by saying, Orial mentioned, you know, as far as being able to see when white people are maybe not even aware that they have their own jokes and they're all watching Seinfeld. And so what we have created, that's like a bias that we don't even realize that we have, right? So we are creating workshops within DNG that really help us to unpack some of this inner development work that we all truly need. You know, like I can actually say that and feel comfortable. We all need that, you know, that inner hygiene, so that we can see the things that we don't even realize are running the show. And so I'm just happy that we're able to do that. Such a pleasure to meet you, Orial. Pleasure to connect with you, Martine.
Before we go to Q&A, we're going to continue the conversation with Tahira White from 19th and Park. Afterwards, we invite you to the chat room where we will have Q&A with the speakers and moderator. Thank you.
So we know that you are the co-founder of 19 and Park, and that you are also COO and executive producer at 19th and Park. And so we're so pleased that you're here with us. And I became aware of the fact that you are you are in this specific space where you are a Black female-run ad agency in New York and LA and Atlanta in a very white male-dominated industry. And I was really curious in terms of how this Black Lives Matter movement and also perhaps the Me Too movement has shifted the way, or has it shifted the way that 19th and Park functions and the work that you do?
Yeah. Again, thank you for having me. 19th and Park, you know, it was created 4 years ago on the heels of already disrupting what we'll say the system was in terms of how ad agencies as well as production companies operate, and the lack of representation that we saw in the rooms that make the decisions. But we created 19th and Park as a space to put forth creatives, both in front of the camera and behind the camera, to diversify the space all around. The BLM and Me Too movement, it hasn't necessarily shifted how we operate, because we've always been proudly Black-owned, female-owned, Black-operated, female-operated to the core. And that's just remained consistent all the way through. What it has done is actually just put more visibility on our agency. More people that probably weren't speaking to us or considering us before are now giving us an opportunity, and we're absolutely taking advantage of it and showcasing, hey, just because we're Black-owned and female-owned operated doesn't only mean that we can create multicultural content. That was a pigeonhole that we fell into when we first actually started. It was like, hey, 3 Black girls, great, make all of our AA content. And it was funny because I actually don't come from that background. I come from fashion and luxury. So it was like, we can actually create content and experiences that speak to all audiences globally, cross-culturally. Just because we're Black doesn't mean that we only speak to Black people. And so that was a fight that we had been, kind of forcefully pushing since the start. And what BLM and Me Too have done is just kind of open up people to listening a bit more than they were previously. But in terms of how we operate, we're still the same. Very proud.
It's very interesting. We've, through American Photographic Artists, we've had several panel discussions where we talk about the art of storytelling and who gets to tell which stories. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that came up is that we, as people of color, no matter what term you prefer to use, BIPOC, people of color, Black people, we're so used to digesting and watching stories that have been told about the white experience, that I feel like that's something that I could just do left, right, and center. I don't feel like I can only tell stories about the Black experience. So I'm really excited that you, 19th and Park, is getting a chance to tell more stories from various viewpoints.
From all viewpoints. And we've been proactive in making sure that we take those opportunities and we put ourselves forward for those opportunities, because like you said, we can speak to all voices. We can also build diverse teams. So it doesn't have to be all 100% Black, right? We're built in a nimble way where we scale up and down according to the project needs. So if there's a Asian creative or a white creative or an Indian creative, and they can speak the language of the project, that is more of what we're basing how we build our teams for than anything else. It's super important that, yes, we are, breaking the system and we're educating people on the opportunities and we're putting people in place in different positions. But it's definitely also important that people have the skill sets and the understanding to be able to tell these different stories. And when you look at our portfolio, it goes everywhere from Coach to Maui Moisture to Dark and Lovely to Uninterrupted. So it really is, when we say cross-cultural, we really truly mean cross-cultural and generational.
Ooh, and that's another one that's very important, generational, because we don't want to concentrate on just one segment of or an age group, really.
Yes.
So one of the questions I had for you was how, for us to talk about some of the action steps that 19th and Park are taking to set a course for change in your organization and the industry as a whole. But it sounds like that is what your organization does inherently.
Yes, inherently we're a safe space. We've always wanted to be a safe space, and that goes all the way down to how we communicate with one another, from the top down, how we hold team meetings, how we hold team check-ins, but not just team check-ins, but we also pride ourselves in individually checking in and checking up with one another. And you see that throughout the culture amongst the agency. So everybody has individual relationships as well as collective relationships. During the pandemic, while we were making sure everyone had equipment, it was also like, we're going to send you sea moss. We're going to send you aloe vera plants. Like, we just want to make sure that spiritually, more than anything else, like everyone is grounded and feels good, because that's what matters most than, meeting a deadline or, hitting a benchmark. And if you're spiritually grounded and you feel secure in your workspace, you feel safe in your workspace, then that is going to help you excel as an individual, which ultimately as an agency pushes us forward.
That's great. I was thinking as you were chatting about creating a safe work environment and having an inclusive work environment. And I'm assuming that there are some people who are listening to you and me talk, and they're thinking, gosh, like how do I institute this? How do I make a change? Or how do I even take a small step towards setting that safe work environment? Do you have any suggestions or any I don't want to use the word tips, but that's the only thing that's coming to mind right now. But any suggestions for people who are embedded in maybe a larger organization or a small agency who are looking to just take a few steps to create that change in their organization as well as in the industry as a whole?
Yeah. There's two sides, right? Because there's probably the people that know and understand and really want it. And then there's people that feel pressured to do it because of external forces and things that are happening around them. My first thing is always going to be like, check yourself first. Mm-hmm. Like, make sure that your intent is actually authentic, meaning check how you feel and what your views are, so that when you do communicate with your team, when you are trying to create this safe space, that it is intentional. And not by force, because we're seeing that a lot as well, and then it's not well received by the team. And there's a trickle down effect from that. The next thing I would really say is just have conversations. Like, we have a safe space because you can say how you feel. You can call me, you can call Whitney, you can call Elizabeth, our director of HR, and you can express how you feel. You're not going to be reprimanded. There's no bullying. There's none of that, nature. And it could be because we're mostly women +2. So we understand the importance of conversation, but also from an executive standpoint, really get to know your team, meaning like have face-to-face on the phone conversations, and not just like a check mark. Hey, I did it this one time because I was supposed to. Like, make it a regular, consistent thing. We're checking in. If we can't get on the phone this week, by next week, we're making sure that we're touching each person. But in some way, shape, or form, across the week, I'm touching each person directly in my organization, and that to me is the most effective. Yeah, that's all I can think of right now. Definitely, just be intentional and communicate directly with that intention.
Wow. That was really amazing. And I think some people listening in can remember, and I think all of us have had that experience of working in an organization where you didn't feel appreciated, you didn't want to go in. And it makes such a big difference to work at an organization where you are people are connected with each other, and your boss is staying in touch with you to make sure that you're well, and I think oftentimes that helps people operate at a higher. They have they're more productive, and they're happy at work, and so they produce better work.
Yeah, you want to feel seen, right? You want to feel known. You want to feel like if you have a side project or you have something, we also very much allow people to have side hustles and side projects. If you need legal advice, like if Brandy, our lawyer, has time, hit her up, like if you need HR advice, if Elizabeth has time, hit her up as well. We're not selfish in terms of resources because we also know as Black people, resources are our base. And for us to excel as a community, we absolutely have to become more habitual about sharing resources, sharing our knowledge with each other.
Well, Tahira, thank you so much. I really enjoyed chatting with you. And I know that other people who are listening to this, and whether they are coming in through the book or if they're coming in through APA, American Photographic Artists, they're going to get a lot of really great tips, and they're going to be inspired to maybe start an organization or even to change the culture in their own organization. So I really thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Love the book. Mark, all of those people, thanks for putting this together. I'm glad to see them using their platform as a conduit of change as well. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for being here. We're hoping that the brands and agencies who are here today will consider bringing some of this great energy and efforts to their own places of work. There is so much that can be done, even on an individual basis. So we hope that this has motivated you to do that. We will now go to the Q&A. Thank you.